This meeting is held in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The news media has been notified and a copy of the agenda has been made available to the public. The meeting is open to the public and the public is welcome to attend in person. All persons wishing to attend the meeting by virtual means may do so via YouTube, Sumter School District Board meetings, and Sumter School District's Facebook page. Vision: the Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all the students to reach their full potential. The mission for Sumter School District is committed to providing a safe, nurturing, and high-quality educational environment that supports diversity and equips students for local and global success. The committee members today is myself, Dan Palumbo, Chairman of the Finance Committee, Mrs. Tara Kusar Johnson, and Mr. Jeff Zell. Our subcommittee members are Mr. Paul Robbins and Mr. Mitchell Williams. Hopefully, will be attending soon. Dr. Wright has a family emergency, so he will not be here today. And we have Ms. Spearman. Okay, Ms. Spearman is on her way, and she's the Chief Financial Officer. And of course, Ms. Scott, the Administrative Manager and Superintendent and Board of Trustees. And I'll call this meeting to order. Tonight, we're gonna go over a couple of old agenda items. And for about that will include I believe a new procurement measures, and then we also going to get into the hopefully it was more of a brainstorming session for the committee to come up with incentives and the 23-24 budget we're going to talk about today. So, Spearman. I'm going to go ahead. Oh, there's. Oh. Well, I'm just going to go over. Second. First, we're going to go ahead and for the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any discussion, any issues? Going once, going twice? All right. I'm going to go over a little bit of old information in regarding some of our past questions that we have. Ms. Spearman has gotten back to us, and partly with some of the questions that Mr. Zell had and Ms. Johnson had in regards to how much will the connector for the electronic documents or purchase order approval will cost. The district has secured a purchase. The answer was that the district has secured purchase order for any add-ons with Harris School Solutions in the amount of $1,786. Our goal is to have it in place by the start of the new school year. We're currently working on setting up approval flows that will serve as a roadmap to approvals and process flows. I think she's going to kind of go over that with the purchase orders. And the Committee also asked for a breakdown of supplies and purchase services. Supplies that the district purchases includes instructional supplies and office supplies, textbooks, maintenance supplies, building repair supplies, technology supplies that are used in completion of an employee's job. The purchase of services are those services that the district cannot provide and are not performed by the personnel of the school district. Purchase services that our district utilizes include iTutor, Frontline, digital subscriptions, therapy services, and postage machine usage and telephone usage. And how you doing, Ms. Spearman? Doing good, doing good. We're just going over some of the answers that from the old agenda, and we're hoping that you can provide. The first thing on the agenda was procurement and the updates on that.
Yes, sure. Well, we did secure a purchase order with Harris Solutions. That is who maintains our accounting system, and they have the add-on. Surprisingly, it was only $1,700 and something, which was great for us. We didn't know what to expect for that. And so now what we're doing is that we're going through the approval process. This is what takes the longest. When we have a document, where does it go? And it's going to be account driven. So if it's high school, we have to put names with the principals and their bookkeeper and where it goes up to the district office level. So that is the where we are now to get that process going. We're meeting with our IT department. We're working hand in hand to make sure that that is a smooth process and that we'll get the results that we want to get.
Chair, I have just a quick question. Could you just walk through the process, like just a simple process of say a teacher needs an item, what the approval should look like?
Well, of
if you don't
course,
mind.
it depends on funding, because if something has to go to the Title I office, they definitely have to go ahead and approve that. So once it leaves the school, normally the bookkeeper or whoever will create the purchase requisition in the system. It will then have to be approved by the principal. Of course, this is paper-based at this point. And then it will have to come up here and go, if it's grant, to that department, and then if it's over 2,500, it goes to the appropriate departments until all signatures are done, and then they can move forward with the purchase.
And that should be completely automate the system?
Yes,
process?
that
Okay.
is our
Excellent.
expectation, and that's what they say, once we set these workflows up, then that's what should happen.
So you're looking at something, on average, is what, taking close to a week, could come down to a couple of days?
I would hope
Or-
so. I would hope that it was, because we're always checking our emails. I'm envisioning, and once we have a meeting with the details, I'm envisioning a notification that you have something to approve. You click that, and it moves on. So hopefully, and we'll definitely be monitoring the time frame.
Thank you. Any
Yes.
other?
I guess one question in regards to that process. I'm assuming these are all going to be digitally signed approvals
That is
with
what
a
we're,
timestamp?
that is what we're hoping. We haven't received that detail, but we just working on the workflow piece now.
Okay.
And so we'll gradually get to that. And again, our hope and our goal is to have this up and running by the start of the new school year.
Any other questions on procurement? Looks like we're going to be improving for next year. And thank you for all the information and the work on that. That helps, and that didn't seem like it cost that much money to streamline
We were
something
surprised.
yeah.
Very surprised.
Next agenda item up for, and this is more as a working group and bringing out ideas, and this is going to be for the financial recruitment tools and incentives for new hires for next year. And sir, definitely, if you can please jump in here, we're going to definitely need you to help and to brainstorm. There's one item that I kind of want to throw out there as just an idea that, and Ms. Spearman, I kind of tossed around with you, and maybe you had some information on it. And please, anybody that wants to, negative or positive, or coming up with a different idea, I see what's going on right now, that we need to be thinking outside of the box and bringing teachers here to the Sumter School District. And one idea has brought to my attention that sounded pretty good, was something to the nature of a $5,000 down payment on a house if you're living outside the county, $10,000 if you live inside the county, to sign on for a contract for so many years, prefer maybe 5 years. But again, that's all brainstorming to put together. I'd like to have something to come up to show to the board. And it may not be this idea. So so it would be $10,000 to put down for the down payment, and they sign for 5 years. And so I know Mr. Robbins has some questions of one, and myself, is it legal, or could we make it legal? And I think you may already have some type of update on that, Ms. Spearman, because if you were going to look into it. So, and I'm going to just put this out to the committee to brainstorm and put it out there.
Well, we definitely sent out a question about the legality of it, and I haven't received anything back. But we do have some recruitment retention strategies already identified for this district. And so maybe we can go into that to a certain degree, and let you know what we're thinking, and what we have.
Good afternoon. I have Ms. Addison, who is my Director of Teacher Quality, with us right now as well. She and our staff have been working on trying to put something together for some incentives to bring forth. She actually presented, she and Ms. Walters, our recruiter, presented to the executive staff, I believe maybe last month, in reference to some things that they've put together, some things that they're seeing when they're going to the recruiting and the recruitment fairs. So they see what we're dealing with, especially when they go to a recruitment fair and you have someone beside them and they're offering all of these different things that are really bringing people to those tables, and we're not showing the same things. So basically, what they have put together is, right now, some of the incentives that we are actually offering for recruitment. Right now, we're offering alternative certification support. So we're helping teachers when they come in reference to if they're trying to get alternative certifications. That's our PACE folks, our Teachers for Tomorrow, that's our ABC teachers, that's anybody who's going through an alternative program. We're providing support for them, whether it's someone coming in to help them pass the test, because that's a big issue, or providing materials for them, praxis materials to take the test. We're also paying for their classes when they go through, if they pass the test and if they are pass the class. So what they do is when they finish the program, they submit their bill to us, and we pay that for them right now, provided they pass. We're doing that right now with SARA money. So this is not our money, it's not the district's money, this is money that we're being given by the state. So it's not costing us anything as far as the general fund goes. Some of the things that we would like to do and try to offer is with our international folks. We have quite a few international teachers that are going to be coming on board this year. When they get here, they have nothing. We'd like to give them, and some of the other districts are doing this as well, they're giving them a loan of $2,000. That way they can come in if they need to buy, put that down payment on a car, they need to buy some furniture, whatever they need to do, it kind of helps them out a little bit. This is something that we would recoup from them throughout the year. So we would take a little bit out of their checks each month. to get the $2,000 back. That's something that wouldn't cost us anything, but it is something that would draw other folks to us. We're also sponsoring folks right now on H-1B visas. And we've gotten a few folks in this year coming in that we are going to be sponsoring as well. Another thing we would like to look is our new teacher institute. We'd like to, when teachers come on board, we would like to provide an institute for them for some training and give them a $1,000 stipend. Now, the training would include, and I tell you what, Ms. Addison, I'll let you speak in reference to the new teacher institute. All right?
Good afternoon. Currently, for the upcoming school year, we do have a 3-day institute planned for all of our new teachers. If they are a special education teacher, they will be with us for 4 days. The purpose of the institute is to kind of front load them with support as it relates to instruction as well as classroom management, some of those things that teachers typically struggle with during their first year. They will also get some extensive training and overview provided for all of our technology platforms so that when they do go into the classroom, they'll be ready to instruct our students.
And right now, when they come in for those 3 days, they're not getting anything. We actually do a 2-day new teacher orientation, and we're not giving them anything to do that. They come in, and it's right before school starts, usually a couple of days before they're supposed to show up for their first day. And it's so that we can orientate them, we can get them their computers, we can get them ready to get started when they go into the classroom, but they're not receiving anything. Another thing, we talk to the executive staff, if we cannot do this monetarily, then can we give them some days? That costs us nothing. They come in, they have no days, they haven't earned anything unless they're coming from another district, then they can transfer their days in. They come in now, we give them 3 days because they're working 3 days basically. They have 3 days of leave. If they get sick, something happens in that first month or two, they have days, and we're not going to dock their pay because they can't come to work. So this would be another incentive that we can put out there. One of the other things that we were asking is maybe a new hire referral bonus for our folks who are here. If you get someone to come in and they say, oh, by the way, Ms. Addison referred me to y'all, I'd like a job. If we hire you, we give you a bonus because you have now referred somebody to our district. Possibly of $100 or even more if we can do more. The other thing is, and this is big throughout all of the districts, is that sign-on bonus. Now, sign-on bonuses are a temporary fix. They're a Band-Aid. But people are still looking to get those bonuses. They may come in right now, if you give them a $2,000 bonus, they may stay here a year and they're gone. They may stay longer if they like it. And if we can keep them here, we keep the retention bonuses going, we keep other things going within our district, they may stay. But at least it would be something to draw them in that first year, to get them to come in. And that's what we're competing with a lot of districts, is those sign-on bonuses.
What could we do to go a little bit above and beyond to try to keep them here for more than a few years? This with the sign-on bonus. That's why I want to make sure if we could sign them for multiple year contracts. So instead of just the one, that's my biggest thing. I'm looking at the long term, not the short term.
Well, and with a lot of folks, it depends on how much, the amount that you offer them. If you offer them a $1,000 sign-on bonus, they're not going to sign with you for 3 years. You give them a $3,000 sign-on bonus, you can probably keep them for a year. You do a $5,000, you might can get them up to the 3 years. But it just depends on how much of a bonus we're willing to give as to what we can actually have them sign for. And most folks are not, like I said, they're not going to sign a 3-year contract for $1,000 extra. They're not going to do it. So it has to be substantial if we want it to be 3 to 5 years.
You had something?
Even if you give them a sign-on bonus, you talked about retention bonuses. I mean, as I sit here, it's a play on terminology of monies is what it is. And I just wonder if we did something like that, what is the retention bonus going to be?
if you do a sign-on bonus for that first year, say $1,000 or $2,000, and then you do the retention bonus the next year for $2,000, they're actually getting a $2,000 bonus every year.
Oh, and then the difference is, instead of doing bonuses, is a way to increase salary just for that same amount. I mean, it's a play on words is what it is, and it's how we sell it.
Yes,
Go
sir.
from there, but I mean, it's still, if you give them a sign-on bonus and then the retention bonus each year, that's true cash that's coming out that has to be paid. And eventually, at some point in time, it's where we are right now, but at some point in time, that ceases, but don't know when it's gonna be.
Yes, sir. Some of the things that we're doing also right now as far as our retention goes is the tuition reimbursement through Sarah. If they don't qualify or they have already used up their teacher reimbursement or their teacher tuition, you know, if you teach in a certain area, then you can get the teacher loan. This is above and beyond that Sarah does. We send that out to our employees every year, and they sign up for for this loan. And it's not through us, it is still through Sarah, so they have to qualify through Sarah to get this. And then again, the retention bonuses, which we are doing now. And then we do our mentorship stipends for our mentor teachers at this point. So, and that's about $500 we're giving those folks to help mentor teachers that are coming in. Some of the things that we would like to possibly do is set up an opportunity to have some type of graduate degree cohorts. Bring the different colleges in and have our folks able to go in and advance their degrees. And we would be a partnership with them, but it would still be an estimated cost to us. If we say 15 people in the cohort, we're looking at possibly $360,000. But it would be us, and it's still something that we could bring to our folks to keep them here. They would apply, go through an application process, and then if they can get into that degree program, then it's something we can do. It could also help us build our admin pool coming in. If we offer the master's degree in education administration, it could help with those in our future. Another thing would be maybe performance-based merits or stipends. If someone does well on testing, then we maybe possibly give them something in reference to them doing well or their class doing well, and do some type of merit-based compensations for folks.
Is that per school? If it, like, can we do it for that school that increases their scores, that they get some type of stipend for that, which will hopefully incentive the other schools to try to, and more be competitive. That's where we're heading to,
Yes,
is that each school has to be competitive and start going against each other and try to get their scores up. Is that something that you're looking at too, that we could bring to the board to?
We could possibly look at doing it per school. We actually broke it down per teacher. And if the teacher does well, then if you give the teacher $1,000 merit increase or merit, and I hate to keep calling it stipends, but you give them a merit incentive, then you're looking at about, there's 1,028 teachers. You're looking at over $1 million to do that. But everybody may not qualify for it.
Right.
Depends on what, the qualifications we set up, and then whether or not they reach those goals. So everybody may not qualify for it at that particular time. But it would be something to strive for. It could help our academics, it could push teachers. I remember several years ago when I was in the classroom, they were giving merit stipends or merit increases for if your school did well, and it may have been $600 because your school did well or because you did well. Now this was a long time ago, but it was nice, and it kind of motivated folks to do better as well.
Mr. Chair, just have a couple questions if you don't mind. So just a quick statement is I believe, I believe that any sort of award situation, any sort of incentives should be merit-based. I mean, that's predominantly merit-based. That's how we create the culture of excellence, right? That sort of thing. I understand, though, if you don't have, a history with a new teacher, you don't know, there's no opportunity to, so getting them in the door is a separate issue. And so that's kind of leads to my question. As far as the Recruitment Institute, I'm very interested in that. I think that that's a part of, it sounds to me sort of like what the district and Dr. Wright and the team's trying to do with professional development. Is that interconnected there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what sort of expectations should we get what does I guess the curriculum look like for this institute? Is it to, create goals with them, match them with mentors? Because we know, what I hear often is that unfortunately, just like any other other industry or profession, teachers aren't just graduating college and then has it all figured out. They need development. And so if you could speak to that, I'd really appreciate that, or whomever.
Sure. Currently with our New Teacher Institute, and this is something that happens every year, this year we just expanded it to more than 2 days. The first day is solely for our special education teachers. These are brand new teachers to the profession, or either our international teachers who are coming over. They will work with our special education department to ensure that they understand the expectations for writing IEPs and for supporting the students, and also how to operate our system, the Enrich system, so that they're not figuring that out during the school year. They'll have that information up front. The second day, which is the 17th, we will begin with our opening session, and that's our Hoorah, Welcome to Sumter School District. And they'll then begin to hear our mission and vision from our superintendent as well as his expectations. That afternoon, that's when our technology department, our instructional technology department, will then begin the process of providing that overview of our technology platforms. That's our Schoology, our Google sites, Edmentum, whatever our platforms are, Mastery Connect. That's when they'll get the orientation to that. They will actually work with the teachers for a period of 7 hours. It's 4 hours one day, and then the next day, which is the 18th, that morning, they'll have them for 3 more hours just to ensure that they understand how to access the systems and use it, not just here are your systems and then let them figure it out. So they'll have opportunities to answer questions and get an in-depth understanding of the expectations and the systems. That afternoon of our second day, this will be our second day, they'll meet their mentors. We'll have a mentor luncheon, and therefore they'll hear the expectations that mentors will have, our expectations for mentors for the district. They'll get an opportunity to mix and mingle with the mentors to get to know them, because this really will be their first opportunity to meet the individual who helped guide them throughout their first year. Then that afternoon, we will also go over our induction program requirements. As a part of being a new teacher, you do have the institute that you will take part in the summer so that we can front load the information. But they also participate in monthly sessions and trainings to help develop them throughout the year. And so that afternoon, we'll just go over that course outline for each month so they can see how we'll support them throughout the school year. We also have a bus tour planned so that our transportation department will take them through Sumter County so they can see the areas that our students are coming from, as well as some key places within Sumter that they can go and explore since they'll be new to our city. And then the last day we've partnered with Educational Epiphany. They will then really get in depth with what our content standards are and how to pull those skills out so that our teachers know what to teach and to the level that they should teach our students on, and how to assess them based on the standards as well. And then that afternoon, we've partnered with Bob Stevens from the State Department. He'll go over classroom management, and he's going to give them 10 powerful strategies to help them with classroom management. And so that's really what the institute, the outline for the institute, and then the monthly sessions will then be a follow-up to those.
Well, I think that's absolutely what's necessary and needed, and I applaud you all for it. If we can even do more than that, I highly encourage that. Just one suggestion, I know that Dr. Kumis always hears us ask this. Do you guys have a mechanism for feedback and for, feedback for if the program's working? And I know we ask you that question a lot, but do you have like exit surveys type stuff?
Yes.
And that's if you don't, please, I would highly suggest it.
Yes. We currently have an induction program. It's something that happens every year. This is my first year working with the induction program, and then looking at and reading the surveys that our current induction teachers completed. A number of them asked for the support during the summer before school started. So they asked for the instructional support as well as support for classroom management. And the surveys also indicated that they wanted more support with our instructional programs. And so all of their feedback is why we designed the program the way we did for this upcoming school year.
I think it's the right direction. Thank you for that.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much, Ms. Addison, for that update on that institute. Very structured, practical, and efficient. Really like that, and I think that those new teachers will appreciate it as well. There were some clarifying questions that I had, or just questions that I wanted to ask to understand a little bit more. Mr. Kumis, you mentioned the teacher reimbursement for tuition. Did you say that's through Sarah?
It is.
Yeah, okay, do we do anything as a district with that any longer? I know we did at one time, years and
No.
years ago.
No, ma'am. The only thing that we actually do right now with the teacher reimbursement is if they're going through an alternative program. And it's still through Sarah because that's the funding that we get. We pay for PACE program. If they're going into the PACE and they're going through classes, which they have to do for 3 years, as they're going through the PACE program, they'll submit their bills or whatever to us in reference to the materials, the classes, or anything else that is associated with that. And we reimburse them for that. We do ask them to send it after and make sure that they pass before we invest in it.
Okay. And you all shared a lot of great ideas around teacher recruitment and teacher retention. I don't know if that was based on what actual dollars may look like, if it's practical for that, but love the ideas. You even mentioned for international teachers, perhaps looking at a $2,000 loan or a loan of some type. Would that be interest-free for those
Yes, ma'am.
teachers? And then secondly, you also mentioned an idea, a concept around teacher support for new teachers who are coming in, that $1,000. I may have missed a part of that, but you mentioned it could potentially be days that they get or the incentive of the actual $1,000. I would ask that if that is considered further, to actually put both options on the table and perhaps let it be the selection of the individual person. Some may be more interested in the money. Some may be more interested in the time.
Okay.
We know that we have millennials that are in education, coming into education, and it's not always money that is actually appealing to them. It could be them having time to do those things that they enjoy doing. So I think that as we look at the various options that we could put on the table, that we do take all age groups into consideration. But a lot of great ideas, and thank you so much for sharing those. The last piece that I will mention is around the referral bonus. If we were to do something like that, and I think it's a great idea, most industry do something like that, I would ask if we could consider more than, let's say, $100 or whatever that looks like, to really make it appealing. We don't just want them going out recruiting anyone. We want quality, but actually looking at that and considering if our budget would permit us to do a little bit more.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. The more we do, the better the incentive for the folks. And we did have a couple of more if you want me to keep going.
I've
Those
just
are
got,
good, and we may hear about others
Yeah.
along the way. I wouldn't say that we would have to have them all in this session.
yeah. When do you have this all packaged? And I know from Ms. Spearman wants to see if we can do anything in the budget. Do you have this already packaged and moved over to you to look if we can do some of these incentives and get them going for the new school year?
Well, we did, I did include them in some expected expenditures when we get to the expenditure portion of the presentation, and we can see how it fits and what we can do.
One recommendation, what's your recommendation as a sign, after you've seen through all these other districts, and what do you feel is not just the typical norm, just where you think would benefit us to get to bring in some of these teachers from different districts and different, and how long, as in for a contract, to sign them on for?
I would at least try for $3,000. And if you're looking at $3,000 for them to come in, maybe 2 years, and $5,000 if they'll commit to 3 years.
Mr. Chair, I have
a
a
lot.
quick question on that, if you don't mind me asking. What's our projection as far as, and this is really, I don't want to go too far outside the finance purpose that we're here, but what's kind of our projection for, recruitment as far as new teachers? I know we're down, I think it's what's
117.
117? Okay, it was a better number than we were
Yes,
last
sir.
time you told
It
us,
is.
so
It is.
thank you for that. But as far as, I can't imagine we're just going to one day get 117 teachers to sign, sign and fill out an application. That said, kind of, is there an expectation of what sort of growth we should see from here to next year, next 5 years? So if you don't have an answer on that, I would just put it in the back of your head, and I would love to hear a 5-year projection, because
Absolutely.
again, what I keep saying, what's happening in Columbia, it's going to come to Sumter County as far as school choice. It's going to happen. And so the landscape of public education is changing, so we have to be competitive.
Absolutely.
That's just the fact of the matter. So
Yes, sir.
anyway, thank you. That's more of a statement than a question. Thank you.
Kumas, is 3 years the longest you see out there as a standard for signing on, or have you seen like a 5-year?
I have not seen a 5-year. Ms. Hassan, have you heard of a 5-year? I have not heard of a 5-year. I can check with my colleagues to see what they're doing throughout the state, and can get a little bit more clarifications, more information.
Okay, and the next question would be and this could be a different sign-on bonus, what subject or study, I think special needs is a big one, where they get maybe additional to try to bring them here. Have we looked at that as okay, for the standard teacher to come in here, it's 2 years, 3, 5 years, 5,000, 3 years, but a little bit different, $500 more if you're special needs. Have we looked at that where we can actually, we did it in the military, that we look for the harder positions that are out there to bring here to increase their sign-on bonus?
We have not crunched the numbers to do that, no, sir, but we can absolutely do that.
So we can try to, because I know some of those subject areas were hurting, and we
Yes,
may
sir.
want to look at that to try to bring more of that type of subject
Yes, sir.
to fill those gaps.
Mr. Chair, I know it's come up a couple of times from you around them looking into that 5-year retention type of bonus situation. I would just ask, if we were to look at something like that we have clear language. I wouldn't necessarily be for it, because that's a long time if we bring a teacher on and we've already incentivized this teacher, unless we're doing it over the course of that 5-year period where we're not front-loading monies, and then we lose these teachers for lack of whatever it may be. They just may not work out,
Correct.
for lack of better terminology to use at this time.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Mr. Chair, all these ideas are great, but as I sit here and I'm looking at you, there is many ideas, but I think you need to get this down to 2, 3, or maximum 4 ideas that are going to be the best option for us in order for us to understand truly how it's going to affect the budget. Because we could sit here and you haven't talked about all your ideas. We could sit here for hours and talk about this, but it truly is, what is the 2 or 3 main things that we can focus on that will be able to present and maybe even exceed what is out there if it works, but what are these 2 or 3 items that we can really focus on and put our full efforts behind it?
Yes, sir.
Because that will be easier to then sit down and look at the budget and work from there. And it's not necessarily, what I'm gonna get at is necessarily, we look at a budget line item as a dollar amount, not necessarily how it's really 300 for this, 400 for that. I mean, it really is, what's the best use of the money, and each teacher is gonna be different based upon those circumstances.
Yes, sir.
That's what I was also looking at, is time. When will we have a set, 3 to 4 items that we're basically, that's what we're gonna go with? Do we have an
I think
idea?
we can work between the two of us and Dr. Wright to decide what those ideas will be, what we can cement.
Okay, because we want to start working on filling in the 117 vacancies as quickly as possible and get it out there. If you have to put it in marketing material or whatever, we got to get on, get on the ball on this to get this going as quickly as possible, to try to help you out
Thank you.
as much as possible. Any other questions? Thank you so much, Dr. Cummings.
Yes, sir, thank you.
All right, Ms. Spearman, 23-24 budget.
It's coming, and it's here. Please forgive my voice, sinus attack, but I'm gonna make it through this presentation. I wanna start out with fiscal year 23-24 with our superintendent's goals. That is what is supposed to drive this budget, so that it can support the goals and the strategies. That is being the efficient and effective operations. Educational equity is important to us. Recruiting and retaining high-performing workforce, competitive salaries, that is important to us. Safe and supportive schools, climate of support and reduction of interruptive student behaviors, that is definitely important to us. And having our students college and career ready. We believe that these strategies that we will bring before you support these priorities, and we will go through those now. I decided to start with the expenditures first instead of the revenue. The expenditures, what we do is we look at it based on a zero-based budget, in a sense. Every month that I come to the board and present financial activity, that general fund budget is in the amount of over $146 million. That will serve as our base budget, meaning that we will maintain that activity. And then we'll look at our actual activity on things that we went over on, things that our needs. For instance, iTutor became a new need where we had salaries and we didn't have the teachers to fill those salaries, but we did use iTutor, and it kind of was a wash. Well, now we want to have a realistic budget on what we need. And we will be utilizing iTutor next fiscal year, and hopefully that will be the final year for that, is what our expectations are. So to begin on the history of our teacher salary, because that is a big topic, as you can see, back in 2015, we had a starting salary of $30,999. We have seen some increases, some we have not seen, and this has been based on the states and the state legislature's increases, because this district has followed the minimum salary schedule. So it looks just like what the state is. And then, some other districts have more than that because they're able to add additional supplement to it. But for 23-24, the state minimum salary will be $42,500, and that represents a 6.25% increase from the current state minimum. We just wanted to provide the progression of the salaries for that, because we have been tracking with the minimum salary. As we go now to our projected expenditures, I have attempted to make these expenditures that are mandated shown as such, those that have been requested, and those that have fixed costs, and those that have been due to federal compliance. So I'll go through these pretty quickly, but of course we know that the certified teacher salary step is required. Regardless of our budget, we have to increase the salary
that the state legislature goes to. And so that cost from where we are now, and the numbers that I'm presenting is in addition to our $146 million budget. It will be a difference of 1.9 million to serve that scale, that new scale. Another mandate also is the 2,500 per sale increase. Not only will they do a new base salary and a new step, the legislature also wants us to increase every sale on every sale on our salary schedule by 2,500. That is an additional cost to the tune of 3.6. It's actually more than what it would be for the step, actually. The next board requested amount, the bus driver pay. We know that is a big topic right now. What we want this board to know is that, first of all, Mr. Zell, you did request, the board did request us to look at 16. But we realized that right now, based on the prior administration, we've kept an incentive of 3 hours that the bus drivers get. And so that is what they get as an additional incentive, an extra 3 hours. And so to equate that to what they're making, $18 per hour is competitive, and they would not see a decrease in what they're making now. So that's competitive according to the surrounding counties. And so what we wanted to do is not have them see a decrease for the scale piece of it. And so 18 is the competitive number for that.
May I ask, Mr. Chairman, a question on it? Just a little clarification, that's a little confusing.
Yeah.
I'm not a finance individual. That said, so you talk about if we were to request that we pay them less, just tell me if I'm wrong in my assessment of this. If we pay them less than $18 an hour, they will see a decrease comparative to what the state legislature mandates this increases this year?
I'm not clear. You're correct. I'm not being clear.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that the incentive that I'm speaking of where, I'm sorry, sir.
I think what you want a 16 and you're trying to raise it. The state's already raising it, but to get what your incentive on top of that, it would be $18.
That's correct.
Okay.
This district decided on through the last administration to do a 3-hour incentive for bus drivers.
Okay.
And so they're used to getting that. And so we decided, why don't we just go ahead and increase the salary to where it needs to be so that it will be equivalent to that. And so the 18, after we did the analysis, 18 per hour is the amount. And that would cost the district another $564,000.
I'm certainly amenable to that, as long as the budget can support it.
Yes.
And it's, certainly I think we should spend a little extra time as a board speaking about it, but I like where it's at. In order for us to get quality people, we have to pay quality wages.
Absolutely.
And it's that simple. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Spearman, is that 3 hours per pay period or
Yes, 3.
per pay
I
period?
believe it's 3. I think it's 3 per week, or 3 per day. Is it 3 per day? Per day.
Per day?
3 per day.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
We have a lot of bus drivers who are dual employees, so they do custodial
Right.
and bus drivers, so yes.
Right.
That is correct, and that's what the cost would be for us. Another mandated amount is the paid parental leave. If you've kept up with the legislature, we basically have to prepare for this. So this is the additional, the 6 weeks to where someone will not have to take off for, having a child for whatever reason. And that will cost this district $404,000. Another mandate is that the state has changed our funding once again, and the EEDA and the health services folks, like our PE teachers and nurses, they were allocated a special funding amount that did not come through the general fund. Now they want to combine that. And so not only will the revenue transfer over, the expenditures will transfer over to the general fund. And that is now a $1.4 million amount, but the revenue is coming with it in that case. So it'll be a wash, that's correct. Another mandated amount is the step for all other staff. Of course, we call this mandated because we are talking about retaining, and we're talking about retention. And so that is the cost of all other staff to take them up to another step on the current scales. Again, this does not have anything to do with data related to the salary study. This is just from our existing scales. A request for a new position for coordinator of health services in our special services area, to have someone to coordinate that. And that number includes fringe. Fringe is at about 40%. It keeps going up for certain groups of employees. So we did the highest amount, 40%. And I think that comes to a salary of about 75,000. And so we want to include the full amount for that. A federal compliance expenditure type, because of a grant that we have 2 employees in, they now have to be moved out of there and into the general fund for the services that they will be doing. And so that will cost us at the tune of $250,000 for a salary and fringe is the estimate on that. That will have to be transferred from the federal grant to the state grant, to our general fund. A fixed cost. Now we're going to see a lot of fixed costs because everything has gone up. Increase in electricity costs, we're estimating an increase of $750,000. And that's being conservative from actual from last year. So we're trying to be as realistic as possible and to make sure that we have some savings identified as well. Fixed costs in natural gas, we expect a $9,000 increase. Fixed costs in gas, of course, another $100,000 is what we expect. Increase in maintenance and supplies for heating, grounds, and plumbing in all of our schools, of course, that has definitely gone up. We expect a $149,000 increase. Our maintenance repairs, $167,000 increase. And then increase in bus driver training. This has been a request that we want our bus drivers to get training as well. And we estimate about a $13,500 increase for that. Increase in security. We all know that security is a hot topic, and we expect an increase of about $228,000 in security increases. Fixed costs related to printing costs for all of our new manuals, code of conduct, when we change things. Sometimes we do have to do a print job on those, and we estimate about a $12,000 increase in cost for that. Another fixed cost is increase in tech supplies needed for staff, such as laptops or what have you. We estimate about a $6,000 increase on that. A request was made for increase in staff training in travel and supplies. We estimate about a $14,000 increase across the district for that. A request, an increase in 4K and early childhood travel and supplies due to decreased funding. We estimate about $20,000 of that due to funding being decreased. We also expect a request made for increase in health supplies to the tune of $1,300. And then a fixed cost. This is a big one. An increase in technology services. A lot of these renewals and software items have like a 5-year. So once we pay this, it's good for about anywhere from an average of 2 to 5 years. And so that is just a big number we estimate for just this fiscal year, for 23-24, because how they came due. An increase in fixed costs for SLED background checks. We estimate about $8,000, of course, due to turnover. We're having to do more background checks. That is what we saw with actual numbers. And so we just estimate that that will increase up to the tune of about $8,000. And finally, something good to the tune of about a savings of about $270,000. This district is getting on with a group called RAS, who has consolidated the different copier companies, and we have gotten an extraordinary pricing for this district. Over 5 years, they estimate that we should save about $1.8 million. I prorated that, divided it by 5, and I took 75% because that current contract that we're on ends in September, and so the new contract will start then, and so we estimate about a $270,000 savings. That's how I calculated that. And so for fiscal year '24, we see projected increased expenditures of about $11.4 million. So my goal and my task was to make sure that we had at least that much in increased revenue to cover that. And then voila, we have a balanced budget. Let's see if that happens. On to the revenue projections for fiscal year '24. Yes.
If we have questions about that section, should we wait until we get to the end, or?
No,
Go ahead.
yeah, I think, go ahead, yeah, because I have a couple too.
Oh, okay. My first question is around the security cost, that 228. Is that in terms of physical bodies, or is that in terms of equipment?
I believe that is bodies, because we have one with the county, one with the city, and those are the ones that we have to pay for. Some of those we get through a grant that the county and the city made through, and then we don't have to pay for those. So that's the increase to cover the additional schools that have not been covered. And so I think we'll eventually get to where every school is covered. Yes. So that is the increase for that.
Okay, and then my second question is around the technology line. With that technology, and I cannot remember, I was actually sitting here thinking about it, and maybe I don't remember the answer. We actually own the computers that our students use, right?
We do, yes.
I guess an assessment was done to determine that that was the most cost-effective and efficient way to go at this, because I know in some instances you have the option of leasing, and I wasn't sure which way we were doing it. But my question on the table is this the most efficient way in terms of buying versus leasing? And whenever you look at the fees that we end up paying for replacement or for fixing the equipment, is it still less than that of leasing?
That's a great question. And so I will get with our IT director to talk and crunch those numbers to see what we're looking like and get a response back.
Okay, and then my final question is around the copier contract. I don't know if this is just the copier itself, the savings that we're looking at with the equipment itself, or if it takes into consideration a set number of copies. Because I just want to be sure that we aren't in a situation where if we go over a certain number of copies, then we eat up that $270,000 in savings because we're copying more than what we have in the past or what our contract dictates.
Well, what makes this contract so unique is that we are still going to be utilizing Xerox. We have had great experience with Xerox, and so they will only change out those machines that need an update. So we'll get that, no cost to that. And then they look at our actual usage, and they base it on that. And so, and then out of the deal, they even get a great incentive, a great discount to have color copies at the schools, which a lot of the schools don't have now. We'll be able to have that, and then with them going in as a group, and this is a state contract, they were able to see a lot of savings and save a lot of districts. And so what we're doing also is going through the motions with that to set that up, when we're talking to the districts that are already on RAS and making sure that we're going to see the savings and their experience with that. So we're walking hand in hand with those districts.
With the expenditures, have you looked at where with the active shooter security systems that they have? I think it's called GeoGo is what it looks like. Many school districts that have it. It's basically it has security badge where you just have to click the badge a couple of times, and how many times it clicks, it sends as active shooter, or you're under duress. Have we looked at different systems? A lot of school districts in South Carolina are going to this type of program. Couple ones you've probably just seen at Fort Mill High School, what they have up there. Have we looked at that as of possibly purchasing for all the school systems?
We have not. Not at this point. We have not.
Can we look at the different types of programs and
Sure, we can
and
look
try to get them into, for more on the security, because we really need it's great that we have the bodies, but we also, they can't be everywhere, so.
Mr. Chair, I just have a couple questions. Ma'am, real quick, the two grant positions that need to be moved to the general fund, do you know what exactly positions those are?
Those are instructional leader positions that one of our grants has taken on.
Sure, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Instructional, okay, so is
Mhm.
is it an interventionist type? I mean, I trust that they're needed, they're necessary, I just was
Oh, yeah, they're
wondering.
needed.
And then,
Yeah, they're needed. To lead instruction and teach teachers is what we're,
Okay,
what they're
all right.
doing.
and actually, that's it, that's all the
Oh,
questions
okay.
I have.
And then, lastly, for expenditures, I know this is a small, very small item compared, you look, but it's a big bulk load. So it goes along with the code of conduct that we're trying to do. These teachers do not want cell phones in the classroom. Having these locked up portable lockers that is very mobile, that teachers can use to lock up all these cell phones. Have we looked at that as a possibility of purchase to make sure that we can mandate in the future? But if we do mandate it, we ready to purchase those items for the middle and high schools?
I believe that the information that was sent to us, it was about $60-something to get it. And my procurement manager was able to find a pricing for $54.99. We estimated about every classroom maybe, and that would be to the tune of about $100,000 that we would have to invest in that. And then we kind of wanted to know about how it would work, how it would be maintained, and would it be done at the beginning of class every time, and then at the end of class, and how the teachers would be able to maneuver that. So we were just wanting to put everything out on the table regarding that, but that's as far as the research we've done regarding that. So
Mr.
about $100,000.
Mr. Chair, may I speak on that real quick? So thank you for that, and I think it's probably a good idea for us to get that information. I don't think, to be honest, that we personally need lock boxes. I think we need to be firm in how we execute the board policy to say that phones will not be present or used in the classroom, and I think that would save us $100,000 a year. So I just think we need to get this code of conduct right, and we need to enforce it, and that's it. And so, but I am interested, I mean, I am interested in seeing that, if there is a benefit to it, there could be some hidden benefit that I'm not aware of, but I'm certainly interested in just really getting at that code of conduct. So, thank you, appreciate it.
Else, Mr. Robbins?
Thank you. As we move on to revenue projections, I wanted to talk about millage, which is a major part of our local revenue. Of course, we know that millage rates are established for current operations and for the general fund generally. It's the ad valorem line for us. And then we have a separate millage rate for debt. Debt service millage has remained at 60 mils since 2013, and right now our operating millage is at 159.4. I just did a graph to show how the millage has remained pretty much the same since 2017, pretty much, and the number of mills. It dropped, I believe, because of a year of reassessment, where it was at 160.10, I believe, and it dropped just a bit at 159.4.
Mr. Chair, real quick, well, actually, you're probably gonna talk about it. I think I just saw it on the next slide.
Oh, okay.
I'm just wondering what each mill is worth.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. We're right there together. The millage rate each year, the revenue and fiscal affairs, and by the way, our millage rate per the county is $202,886. That's what the current millage rate per the county is $202,886 is the value of one mill. Yes, sir. And what we get every year from the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office is what is our maximum allowable percentage to request an increase of millage. And for this year, it's 8%. That would be 12.75 mills. And so per our superintendent and our needs that we'll that we've shown, we are asking for an additional 12.75 mills, which will translate into another $2.58 million. We are currently at 159.4 with the regular base meal, and so we expect 32,340,000 for our base meal, and then the potential increase of 12.75, and that needs to be 12.75, not 6, is the 2.5. So we expect for that line to show an amount of 34,000,009 for the local millage piece of our revenue. And according to our superintendent, of course, he wants us to focus on facilities and retention of employees is what our focus. The next slide is our student enrollment history. For our 45th day admin, we estimate about 14,644. And our 135th day admin, we know that that takes a slight drop each year at about 14,500 is what the current estimate is for 23-24. And I got that from the Power School team. As we go to the next slide, we're going to now talk about the local revenue increases. With the current mill value and our request for additional funds, we will see an increase of about $4.75 million more than what we budgeted last year for ad valorem taxes. Our revenue in lieu of taxes will remain the same, and so we see no increase. We will increase our interest on investments. This is the number that I talked to the board about that was budgeted at about $43,000, and we've collected over $1 million. That is due to our bond revenue and what have you. And so we went conservative on that number and estimate about $357,000 on that. Of course, it entails some other things too. And then that just depends on interest rates. So we wanted to be conservative with that. And then our miscellaneous local revenue, we expect an increase of about $100,000 based on the actual that we've seen compared to budget. So for that piece, we're expecting about $5.2 million of increased revenue related to our local revenue. And so with $11 million in expenditures, we've covered about 5 of that. As we go to the state revenue increases that we expect for our disabled handicapped transportation, we expect a decrease of about $16,191. And we expect that decrease, I think because the process involves the parents filling out paperwork and all of that, and sometimes we don't get it back from them, and we press to get it back. So hopefully we can change that by encouraging them to turn in paperwork that we need for that. We see that we expect a school bus driver salary increase of $385,618 from the state for the state portion that they'll increase. And then we'll see also the transportation workers' comp increase of about $12,919. We expect retiree insurance to increase by $694,996. The estimates for state aid to classroom, which includes now the student health and fitness, the nurses, and the career specialist funding that moved over that revenue, increased to $7.2 million. That includes all of that. That number is soon to be just a lump sum of all of our state funding eventually is what they're going to do. And then our Tier 1 and Tier 2 amounts, we expect them to remain the same, so no increase there. As we go to the continuation of the state revenue increases, the other pot of money that we expect to increase is the property tax relief Tier 3. That came from the Revenue Fiscal Affairs Estimates Office, and so that's about a $2.3 million increase. So for the projected state revenue alone, we see an increase of about 10.65 of that. And so we've essentially covered the expected increases of those expenses, but we do show that we need some more things other than that, which we've talked about already with the retention and all of that. So that's where we are with that. As we move to the federal piece, this is the federal impact aid monies that we get.
We expect to collect about $300,000 this year. There was a budget of 400,000, so I'm just gonna take that down, to reduce it by 100,000. And so for our fiscal year 24 projected general fund increased revenue, we expect about $15,759,000 more, funds.
Mr. Chair, I have a quick question. So, just a clarifying question. So this 15 million, $15.7 million, is this minus the expenditures? Is this, explain that to me.
Okay.
Minus our expenditure, minus our, commitments, is what we will, we're asking for if we get if we get granted the 12 mil, onto what our current general fund is now?
Yeah, that's the over and the increase.
Okay,
Over
so,
what we have. So like I said, the 146 million is the base budget. So everything, all the expenditures that we expect to pay more for next year, and all the revenue we expect to collect over
Okay.
that, that's what we're comparing when we do the budget.
Okay.
So we'll know that we're covering what we need. At
Gotcha.
least the base.
so I guess one of my questions is, and this is kind of more of a big picture, question, is if we have a general fund balance of, what is it, $41 million now, right now, which is apparently a very healthy number. Very, I mean, we're enjoying a healthy general fund balance when our county council is absolutely not. And so and I know this because I just sit in one of their finance committee meetings the other day. That said, is what I'm concerned about is, and if you could explain this to me, is if we ask for 12 mil and we don't, just suppose we operate, cookie cutter 23, fiscal year 23 into 24 with expenditures, the current levels of employees, certified employees, no new, and just go down this rabbit hole with me. Say, the same situation we deal with in 2024 without, filling the billets of certified teachers, bus drivers, will we be increasing our general fund balance at the end of the year with all said and done and everything's kind of status quo? If it was status quo, are we putting dollars in those millages back into our general fund balance?
Yes.
And that's the problem I think the county has. And I think that that's a problem with a lot of, and there's some history to that. And I think this predates you and this current administration. But there's a concern that when we ask for millage, that it oftentimes doesn't get to where it needs to go in new teachers, new hires, the classroom or whatever, and it just goes right into the general fund. Well, I'm not extremely interested in padding the general fund because, well, it's not our money. It's the taxpayers' money. And of course, I want to have a robust public school system with the ability to pay for the things that we want to do and improve this school district to the point where it's highly competitive again. But I want to make sure that we're not asking for dollars just to put it right into a general fund and doesn't get expended, because I think there's a little bit of history and suspicion with that, and that's just me being completely honest. So anyway, you can speak to that if you want or
Yes.
not.
Definitely want to definitely get our superintendent to speak on this as well. But what I can say factually is that we see the history that there hasn't been any millage increase in years. That's a fact. And we see that we have to kill this notion of fund balance is $41 million just laying around, okay? Fund balance is net assets. That means we have to sell every single building that we own. We have to sell every car, every asset we own, and pay every liability that we have to get to a value of $41 million. That's not cash. We have to sell this whole school district and dissolve to see this $41 million. And that's if we'll see $41 million. Who's to say that our buildings are not valued correctly on our financial statements? That is what we have to dispel. We don't have money just laying around, so we're asking this because we want the county to invest in the school district over and above, and we will give a strong, transparent accounting of those dollars. We'll let you know that we want to spend it on facilities and retention of employees. That is what our superintendent has directed, that we will spend those earnest dollars
on facilities and retention of employees.
I think that is a phenomenal way of stating it, and I appreciate that. And I think that that's kind of, you know, and I'm with you. I think that, you know, there's some heartache that maybe, or some rumors that need to be dispelled, or some maybe lack of knowledge. And of course, that said, if that's the case, and so I guess how do we communicate with the community and the county council with what our operating budget is then? At that point, like, how many dollars do we have available to us that we can reach into to ensure that this district is being operated month to month? Does that make sense? If it's not a $41 million account, then what is it? What's the actual number? I'm very interested in knowing that.
Well, we will know that hopefully by the second reading, because this will be the first reading on Monday. Hopefully by the second reading, because these numbers are still not final. Like, for instance, you saw that I reported about a 7-point-something increase in state. Well, that could be $600,000 up or down, because the Senate and the House both have their versions out, and one's less than the other. So when we have a situation where we have more expenditures than revenue, I'm going straight to the costs. And I'm going to say, hey, we're just going to have to cut back on this, this, and this. That's going to be the first thing I do. I can't touch the mandated items, but the other things we're going to have to adjust. And so that's what we have to do to make sure that we're balanced. This school district has about 91% of our budget is spent on salary and fringe. So there's very little operating to even go around. But we have operating costs.
So that's my question is I'm just gonna play devil's advocate. We don't get any millage. What would you cut?
Well, I would go back to my expenditure presentation, this actual one, and I would go out. So normally people do like a 20% decrease on those fixed costs. And we go down and say, okay, did I get my difference of 2.5? I think that comes to $2.5 million. Did I reach that? And then I'll keep cutting those things. We may have to go into travel. Travel is very minuscule. You know, a lot of times that's the first thing you look at. And then you try to keep cutting that way. Then we look at any waste, like what other waste do we have around the district? What kind of amendments that I can make from the general fund to ESSER, that ESSER could cover or that other grants could cover. We will go into that. But as far as what our raw need is, this is what our raw need is after talking with each school principal and their needs and each director at the district office on what they need.
And just to, I mean, if you looked at the revenues and the expenses that she's got there, you got about a $4.2 million positive side, of which 2.5 of that is the 12.5% millage increase rate.
Correct, but the presentation is not finished.
Well, I'm just based on
But you're
raw,
right. That's where we
raw
are right
numbers.
now.
But
You're right.
bottom line here, and this is where it goes back to, is anything that the board wants to propose on this teacher retention, whatever you're looking at, the more detailed, the more specific that you can get and get actual numbers, that's going to be the easiest part to sell to the county with the direct numbers, information. It's going to be easy then for her to keep track of and manage and say, hey, county, this is where dollar for dollar, this is where it's at. But you got to have the exact details and a presentation that, so the funds just don't go into this general fund, and then again, fund accounting for entities like this, it's just more than just looking at assets and liabilities. There's a lot of behind the scenes you got to look at and go from there. But the more precise that this is done, the easier it's going to sell to somebody.
Very true. And you better believe my staff and I, we will be giving account of that, every bit of that 2.5.
No, and that's but,
every dollar, every cent.
So, I mean, you look at that. So really, your millage, 12.5, you got $2.5 million. There's all the retention, what you need to use in order to build get more teachers in. That's where it's going to be at.
You're right. You're right. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. And so the next piece is the fiscal year projected revenue and expenditures. As we talked about, you alluded, revenue increase of about 15.7 million. I'm going to take the millage out right? I'm gonna take it out. This is what we just talked about. And we come to about 13.1 million of additional revenue. And then we put our 11.4 expenditures up there, and we come with a remaining revenue of 1.7. Well, now I want to take and put it back with the millage, and now I have 4.3. I now have 4.3 that I can utilize for facilities and retention. That's the way I view it, and that would keep to Dr. Wright's goal and directive. So if we go through that, I did a slight presentation, not presentation, a slide based on what Dr. Kunis and his team put together. And when we say there is a cost of zero, most likely that is because it's paid by a grant, and we're only concerned with what affects the general fund. And so as you can see, we can, to the tune, if you go to those are the costs that we talked about already that we estimate for the different retention strategies. And then if you go to the second page, we have the remaining expenditures. And so for the full retention package, we come to about $6.3 million. And that does include us continuing the retention bonuses on. So that is the bulk of it, is the retention bonus that we give, the 2,000 and the 1,000, excuse me, that we give. And so we can definitely spend over and above that 4.3 and the millage, because we have expenditures to identify to do that.
Mr., I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I just have a quick question. That 40 asterisk, is that is that our marker for our goal for hiring 40 teachers?
40 international teachers. is
Okay,
what the
40
estimate
international
is.
teachers. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank
That
you
is
very
correct.
much.
Yes. And then, of course, the new teacher one is about 100, even though we have a vacancy of 114, or whatever, the 17.
Understood.
we
So
did
what we're
100.
saying is, just because we're asking for this, doesn't mean we're necessarily going to use it. I mean, I would love to hire by next school year 100 teachers.
Yes.
But we're talking, that's a very, very,
That's a large number.
that's a large hill to
It
climb,
really
so,
much, it is.
okay.
Yes. And so the next slide talks about, about how would we use those monies in a sense. With the millage ask increase of 2.5, the remaining revenue of 1.7 to have that 4.3. And then we're going to talk about the facilities and the retention. We say that our facility piece, we've identified that our 3 high schools need the tracks redone. And that is probably based on what is not covered in ESSER, what is not covered in our capital bond, that is the most important facility improvement that we need. And so we would want to use 1.3 of that for that. And then the remaining 4.3, which is the $3,043,000, is what we would put towards our retention package. And then we would go through, like you have directed, to go through and specifically identify what we're going to do, how we're going to spend, how much it's going to cost. So that is the strategy for that. Other items to note for this presentation is that the expenditure figures outlined in these slides do not take into consideration the results of the salary study. And that there is that $600,000 difference between the state aid rooms, the classroom, between the Senate version and the House version. So in the worst case event, I may have to go in and reduce $600,000 in expenditures. Our goal is to have a balanced budget, revenues equaling expenditures. That's what I have for our fiscal year 24 budget. I do have some additional information for the current stipend that the board had just approved, but if anyone wanted to speak towards the fiscal year 24 budget, the expected revenues and expected expenditures.
Just a quick comment is that, again, this is all, she's got preliminary. You gotta wait till South Carolina figures out exactly what the numbers are
Exactly.
and work from there. But I mean, looking at this, I mean, coming in, not seeing any of this is kind of what I was hoping I would see here at this meeting. So, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, commendation to Ms. Spearman for what she put together for us. It was very common sense, very down to a point where we can really follow and understand.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I second that. And I just have a couple kind of general questions. Actually, they're not general, they're very specific. So I noticed, I keep hearing from some of our bus drivers that, that travel across the state, taking their teams to, different parts of the state. And oftentimes, and again, I don't know fully, but I oftentimes hear that they drive buses that have no AC, no heat, right, things like that. Is there anything in this budget to ensure that our buses are in proper repair? Or is that a different line item or funding that we can tap into? Because I know, and I don't have, and I'm going to sound ignorant saying this, I'm going to ask it anyway, or say it anyway. I noticed our school buses don't say Sumter School District, it says State of South Carolina on it. So but I don't know if that's consequential in any way, or is it on this body to approve the funding and maintenance costs for these buses, or is there an alternative? Is there another mechanism of funding? Because, like I say, one of our big issues is transportation. Obviously, we're getting at that, and this board should hear something very, very soon. But we need to make sure that we're not giving in the best. We're going to hand off our buses that are in good repair to our drivers. And so I'm very concerned about that. I'm not sure if we've focused on that enough, but I certainly think that we should consider that. And so if you wouldn't mind, maybe work with Mr. Myers and see if there's a number there, or if it's even something that we need to worry about.
Okay.
So I would appreciate that very much.
Absolutely. We will definitely report.
All right,
back on that.
and that was it, because one of my other questions was about increasing bus driver pay, and you nailed it, so thank you very much.
I'm just curious, for the buses, they're paid out of lotto that comes from the state? Is that how they come down?
Yes.
Okay, and so we have no choice of types of buses? They just show up?
That the buses come from the
If
state.
you
Do
needed
we have
smaller
any choice?
buses, the state doesn't? Yeah, okay.
Yes, they assign it to us.
Okay, and then expenditures on laptops, to save money, my recommendation would be is for elementary schools to keep laptops in the classroom, because Mr. Zell and I have been to talk to the librarians, and these kids don't care about they're young. They throw them across the room. My suggestion is, with all the costs that is with these, you should see some of you probably have, but you should see some of the laptops. It's just horrible. And I know it was a big issue a few years ago when they directed all students to have them. I think we need to relook at cost-wise, as in just keeping the laptops in the elementary schools, and they can pull them out each day instead of bringing them home. Because I think that would save us more on the maintenance, because they're pretty bad. I feel for the librarians out there. So, any other questions?
Sir, I just have one more, so this is, again, this is more of just a gee whiz question for me, but I am interested because it talks about, we're trying to frame this discussion where we want to incentivize talent to come to Sumter County. I think everyone agrees that is a problem. That said, I would like to, and one good way to, I guess, communicate this to the county, or whomever's asking, is, and I know we have a salary study that should be presented very soon, I hope. I'm very interested in knowing what our lowest paid annual salary is for anybody, any staff member of Sumter Schools. Because I think there's some misinformation out there. Because if I was able to go to, and this is kind of the reason for it, if I can go to county council or whomever, because there's a political element to this, right? I mean, these folks are elected officials, and they have constituents too that say, we want you to raise or lower or don't approve, or whatever it is, whatever case may be. If I can go to the county and say, okay, well, our lowest, paid employee per year is $11,000, well, that's an actual number. Someone's gonna say, that is absolutely, of course, without context, that tells us that that's extremely low in 2023. And likely very low in 2023 without context. So I would love to know, so all that to say is, could you find out, and I guess this may be more of an HR question, could you find out what the lowest part-time employee salary is and then lowest full-time employee salary is? That should be a pretty quick find, I think, and shoot it over to me, however you need to get it to me, I'd appreciate it. I'm very interested.
We can do that.
Thank you very much.
I think on top of that, what you need to be careful on, not necessarily salary, but I think you need to get it down to hourly wage. Just because if somebody says $12,000 a year, they don't know, they're not listening to part-time, full-time after that. All they're listening for is an hourly wage, and that's gonna be an easier sell, not necessarily an easier sell, but easier information for somebody to
So could you add that as
understand
well?
that.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
I got it. The last thing that I wanted to present to this committee was the retention stipend estimates, because the motion that you did was that we would approve at least $2,000 for full-time and at least $1,000 for part-time. And so we've created about 6 scenarios of what that would cost us. And of course, these things have been funded based on the vacancies that we've experienced, and if necessary, a part of that cash that we would actually have. And so that's how these stipends each year have been funded. The first one is if we have by the years. I believe that we wanted to do from 0 to 9 that you got a certain amount, then from 10 to 19, and so on and so forth. And if we did that, along with this, we will pay for the fringe piece of the stipends so that that employee will actually see the full stipend. And so that would cost us 5.4 according to this scale from $2,000 to $3,500. Of course, we can do that however, and do the many more scenarios under this type of thing, but by years, this is what we came up with for the first scenario. And for the next scenario, we just upped it by $2,500 to start, and then the next one to $3,000 to start. And so of course, when you start high, the total gets higher. And these numbers include fringe. This is not just the stipend piece, okay? So that's scenarios 1 through 3, from 2,000 to 3,000 to start. And then we break down the years even more on a scenario 4, from 0 to 5, from 2 all the way up to 4,500. That of course will cost more because you have more categories here. And then of course we included the number of employees that it would apply to. We'll continue to pay the fringe piece of it so that the employee will see the stipend. And so that starts at about 6.4 when we split up those years in increments of 5. And starting with 2,000, the next scenario starts with 2,500. The next scenario starts with 3,000. And of course, the money cost goes up even more, up to about $8.7 million to do this retention stipend scenario for scenario number 6. And so I wanted to present that to you to let you know what those numbers look like, because of course we will need to know how to move forward. We normally distribute the stipend in October of the following year, so that will be in my fiscal year 24, but it's going to be accrued back to fiscal year 23 because it was declared in this year. So that's how that would work. And so if anybody had any questions regarding that. Okay. The last thing I have is just next steps for the rest of the budget process. First reading, of course, will be on Monday, May the 22nd, where I will present this to the full board. And then along the way, every day now, every week now, reevaluating the revenue and expenditure amounts because they can change at any moment. Then second reading, we expect to do on Tuesday, May 30th, and this is a call board meeting that we requested to be done because we have to give the 15-day notice to the public that they will have public input opportunity for the budget. And so that's where those days fell for the May 30th call board meeting to meet that state requirement. And then our county council presentation will be on June 6th. So I just wanted to leave that as the next steps.
I have a question. That county council school budget presentation, is that a select group or is that open?
I believe it's open. I
It's
believe it's
open.
open.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
And this concludes my presentation.
I think it was an outstanding presentation.
Thank
Yeah, great job.
Thank
It really breaks it down. Definitely you'll see it on Monday, and and definitely we'll be doing a lot of conversations during that meeting. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Before we move on, let me see on the agenda real quick. I want to make sure, there was one item that you didn't mention as far as when Ms. Spearman sent us the answers to the previous committee meeting. You didn't talk about the last item. I just want to make
Okay,
sure we
yeah,
get that on
we
the
didn't get to
record.
that, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So whenever, at some point, whenever you feel best suited.
Oh, it's okay. We'll go over it real quick.
And that, Mr. Chair, that was specifically about the debt to
Number 3.
revenue ratios?
Yes, yeah, we were kind of talking, yeah.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Bierman, the question was, the committee inquired as the school district's debt, and what is a healthy amount of debt for a school district to have? And I believe some of us may have questions on this, but the answer was currently the school district has $74.7 million of debt on its current financial statement, which 81% related to the debt is Sumter School Districts 2 and 17. A healthy amount of the debt, according to the industry standards, is no more than 25% of the total revenues. The school district has approximately 199 million
Yes.
in total revenues for all the funds, state, local, and federal. Currently, our long-term debt represents 38% of the total revenues. For the last several fiscal years, the district has reduced its debt total revenues ratio by 4%. At this rate, the district is expected to reach 25% within the next 3 to 4 years. Anybody have questions on that?
Mr. Chair, I just want to say
Yes.
thank you for presenting that information. It probably wasn't, it probably wasn't easy and at your fingertips, so I appreciate you presenting that to us. I just want to make sure that we are obviously focused on long-term debt as well. I think that that's something we don't talk about enough. And I know there's probably more of a formula than I'm aware of calculating this debt, but I do think it's something that long-term we need to concern ourselves with. And then, talking earlier with Mr. Robbins, he had a very good question. And this is something I think that we would be very interested in knowing. Would you want to ask the question?
Well, I
sir?
mean, there's two ways of looking at it. One, you look at debt to income, but more importantly, I guess, the traditional cash flow analysis, debt service coverage, and what that is from the standpoint of course, knowing that for every dollar, whatever cash flow for every dollar worth of payment, that's your ratio, and I don't know where we stand on that, because that to me is more important than your debt to revenue, because it gives you a better idea of what kind of cash flow you have to service the debt, and what does that future analysis provide us, and what is the future borrowing capacity, if needed, at a later point in time.
And if we would, if you don't mind me expounding on that question and statement, I'm very interested to know if we, as we're paying down our debt, how many dollars does that free up for us to put in to wherever else we want to put it? And I think that is someplace that I think we should, as a board, head. So That's just kind of where I'm at, and I just wanted to get it on out there.
'Cause-
I appreciate it.
Yeah, because our future, we're going to look at 10, 15 years down the road of potential new schools and what's the type of debt that we can bring on if we have to go that direction, on merging schools or something to that nature.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Any other questions on? All right, I just want to thank you to the community, the district employees. I think we learned a lot tonight. It was a great presentation by all. I think keeping our eyes as our priorities, our students and our teachers, and trying to make the community, this school district, one of the best school districts is our main priority. So, again, thank you to the community, thank you to Ryan on being out here, and thank you to the committee, and this meeting's adjourned.